If you don't come from money, there's no inheritance cushioning your financial anxiety. There's no savings as a safety net. Money will always be a factor in your quality of life. That's why people stay in the shitty jobs, the stressful relationships that they can't let go of because their finances are tied to them, and the shitty apartment that they always complain about but can't leave because that's the best they can afford. I used to think that becoming an adult meant having life figured out. In fact, in my 20s, I thought that my 30s would have this resolved, but that hasn't happened for me. And I imagine it is so for many others, especially you watching this. Maybe that's why the algorithm recommended this video to you. We can try to explain away this feeling with how the economy is, things not being as they used to be for our parents, etc., etc. The truth is that for every stage of your life, you will have to figure things out. Finances and sources of income are no different. Because there's no manual, we figure life out as we go. It can be very frustrating and confusing. In fact, in my 3 decades on earth, I've held a lot of titles totally different from each other, and they are related to how I make a living. You see, I graduated university with good grades and high hopes that life would give me a very big, grand career. My first job, I was paid 40,000 naira, which is the equivalent of $111, but it was barely enough to pay for my basic expenses. That is excluding rent. At my second job, which was a bank, and that was even the first that was remotely related to my certificate, I earned double that salary, but it came with double the wahala because it was a bank job and I just had a lot of financial pressure that did not belong to me. So I resigned. Then I started a garment manufacturing business. This time the income was not regular. I had some good months, but the money situation was feast or famine. My passion basically kept it going, but passion doesn't pay the bills. There was no amount of forecasting that could predict what each month would bring. And that ended when I moved to a new country and tried to transition into tech. Now, with my transition and sharing my experiences and knowledge of the process led me to blogging and actively creating content online. So far, this has been a feast of famine, except that this time there is more famine than feast. If you follow the timeline up to this point, my first job, banker, business owner, blogging slash content creator, you would see someone who has been jumping from one thing to another. And you might imagine the highs and the lows, the deep points, the moments of extreme self doubt that led me to jump from one thing to another. But you don't have the whole picture. Even me that owned a life, I don't have the whole picture. And to the untrained eye, they see a rudderless ship. And that is very true. The thing is that for a lot of us who are capable of a range of skills, learning new things is not a problem. The problem is in keeping that interest alive for long enough to turn it into a profit. And I found clarity on this pattern when I started reading Danko's book on called Profits and called Purpose and Profits. Dan is one of the YouTubers I admire, and recently he trended on Twitter about the possibility of one of his articles winning the $1 million top article prize. And why I like Dan is that even though he's a motivational content creator, his kind of motivation is not just the do these 12 steps kind of motivation. He goes the extra step to tell you that you have to work at your purpose, and to do that, you have to stimulate yourself from within by becoming disgustingly dissatisfied and disappointed with where you are. That should be your driving force, that should be your fuel. So, in order to understand how disgust is a powerful internal motivator, I tried to find out the essence of disgust that makes us fuel this internal motivation to drive us to get profit from our purpose. And I found that disgust is an intense fundamental emotion that enables you to avoid or escape potentially harmful situations. In fact, becoming disgusted at something or any person in your life triggers strategies to avoid the person or that thing, and also necessitates you to avoid them in future. So dance content typically revolves around triggering this disgust so that you can become your biggest self. And I totally agree with him. In fact, from my observations, I found that people generally change for 3 reasons. The first being external pressure with an undesirable escape route. This is when the change comes with terms and conditions that are unfavorable, and you're either left with do this and succeed or do that and fail. And an example would be with students who don't like studying, but they know that if they don't study, the consequence is failure. So you can either choose to fail or be mediocre and settle. The second type of change I've come to find out is the internal one, where you are genuinely seeking to change even without obvious consequences. And this is why people that are capable of great evil can choose to be kind and good and stick to their goodness, not because that there is a God in heaven that's going to punish them, just because they want to be good and benefit from the um, from the benefits of being a good person. The third kind is the survivor kind, where you're forced into this type of change. Here, there is no choice. It's a do or die affair. An example would be someone who has the beginnings of lung cancer from a lifetime of smoking or obesity or any other such dire situation that has ghastly consequences. The problem is that we want change, but our actions are not always consistent with that goal. Looking at my trajectory over the years, I see a pattern of starting with a strong conviction, getting good enough, and settling till something happens and triggers me to reach again for more. And then the journey starts all over again. And it's important to note that the different reasons for change are not cut and dried. The reasons can change themselves in the course of effecting that change. And in order for you to have an averagely sustained purpose, you have to have more than motivation hacks. Now, aside from the potential of earning from making content, content genuinely makes me happy. Showing up here on camera makes me happy. Researching about a topic, learning more about it before I even show up online makes me happy. Even editing, that as tedious and repetitive as it is, it makes me happy. I just love showing up. Some days that vibe is very low because the numbers are not tallying with the work, but I have something else pushing the drive on those kind of days. That's my something extra. And which is that to add to the love of creating content, I've experienced the promise of earning from it. I would have probably given up by now if I hadn't gotten that promise, if it had just been a vague idea in my head. And this happened when my content earned okay money for a while after 2 years of creating content. So now I know that it's only a matter of time if I continue tinkering at my crafts that it will give me more than I give it. And having put in that amount of work means that now I already know how to achieve it. The problem now lies with the execution. I know that if I treat this as a business, which is what it is, because my motives are partly fueled by profit, if I develop all the skills that I need to become a good content creator and continuously show up, I will get there. But the fire has to keep burning till there materializes, especially when things are not going well. And for times like this, I feel that disgust by mixing up the three reasons for change. I know that I am disgusted enough with financial instability, but I'm genuinely drawn to this work. And at the same time, I know what the consequences of giving up on it means. And maybe I needed all that initial confusion to make me the person I am today, the person that is interested in writing about this topic and speaking about it. I think that every title I ever held, every learning curve I ever navigated brought me to this point where I'm able to be the person that does the work I do. Because even when you leave things, the lessons and the growth go with you. In all of this, my goal was never a job title. That is the conclusion I have chosen to draw. The goal has always been to work as something that gives me freedom to live and create by taking care of my financial problems and at the same time make me happy, which is a non negotiable part of the bargain. And the only guarantee that I will actually stick around for a while to turn that profit. The good thing about the process of figuring life out is that you're not calcified. Confusion is the first stage of solving the problem. I know that confusion is frustrating, but it is an essential part of the figuring out process. If you are willing to move things around to give room for growth, that means you are alive and you have that going for you. My personal takeaway on this journey is that if you have a viable dream, it is not a title or a position, it is something that sparks your interests at the core of who you are, and you back it up with an unshakable belief and an airtight plan, and then work on it like your next paycheck depends on it. You have maximized the odds in your favor, and while life guarantees nothing, you have given yourself the best chance at succeeding. The problem is with settling for the good enough, where your dreams and the lives you could have lived go to die. Hi, if you've watched this part, thank you very much. My content journey kind of gathered dust last year, and I'm only just restarting it. I promise to share my growth with you, but you might miss it along with my next videos if you don't subscribe and engage to tell the algorithm that this is the type of stuff you like. And you also support your girl. Subscribe, like, share. Thank you. See you in the next video. This lights will die on me because I'm not going to reshoot it. I've reshot like 5 takes.